Hi, my name is Kaisa Long, and this is my um, video response to the week one discussion. I have a couple of thoughts after reviewing the readings for this week, after reviewing also my peers' response to my response to the readings this week. Um, Firstly, I'd like to touch a little bit on the article We Look Like Professors Too. And I really liked Mindy's response to my post about how her point was like, how is racism in education still a thing at this point? And it's a great question. I mean, a lot of times we think that we have made such strides in education, especially we made such strides in our racism as a country, and it's just the fact that this article has to be written and rings so true just kind of proves that we haven't really gotten that far. And I was also surprised to see how many other people shared my experience of not really having professors or teachers of color, especially in high school, middle school, and elementary school. I thought that was really interesting. I felt like that was just something unique to me, but I guess not. And if that's the case, then what are the serious implications of that? Like, what is that? How does that impact white kids and kids of color that is the case? Um, and this also kind of made me think about, especially with having like a back to school night at my school this week and meeting parents, um, and also getting to know my kids a little better this week, my students. Like, what assumptions do they come into school having about me? Um, I had a funny conversation with a student who thought that their science teacher was going to be a man. And just like little assumptions we have about people before we meet them, I think are one is very interesting to think about, but two, you know you got to kind of ask yourself, like, how does that affect your experience, and how does that affect your relationship with either a professor or even for me with my students. And so I guess I left this week kind of wondering, what assumptions do they have about me, and how are those assumptions going to change over the year. Um, for Lego's article, questions I need to ask before I advise my students. Um, I was thinking about voice a lot this week as I was teaching my sixth graders to write what we call peak paragraphs, or basically just paragraphs that are really well written with, your point, your evidence, analysis of the evidence, and then conclusion. So again, this is very, very like rudimentary, very beginning writing skills. And as I was teaching them how to write a basic paragraph, I could already sense myself starting to like extinguish their voice within the paragraph, make it professional or whatever that might mean. And it's just so true that in writing, especially in academic writing, especially in high school and undergrad, the idea is to not let your voice be in your writing. Otherwise, it's not academic or professional. And yeah, it was just weird to catch myself kind of falling into that trap after what we read this week. And I think also I really liked Mindy's response to like how our experiences make our voices different. And she spoke about her experience in the army, and I guess that's true. Like, the things that have really affected us really also affect our voice. And Morgan kind of jumped on that and said, "What about what we read? Does what we read affect our voice?" And I think it's all true. I suppose everything that happens to us in our lives can kind of affect our voice and our writing. And I think that just goes back to, what's the value of voice and writing? And does this mean that we should be letting kids use more voice in their writing? Should we be teaching it that way? Um, or do we keep it the same? Or we just teach them not to really use their voice? And so I guess lastly, just to kind of sum it up and mention that I was still thinking about Lord's article this week about how we can turn our silence into power. And I think that is my number one goal, as an ELA teacher is I want to really encourage my students who come from diverse backgrounds, diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, diverse sexualities, diverse races, whatever it might be. I want them to take that silence or those feelings that they are silenced and turn that around and turn it into power and not be afraid to speak their truth, not be afraid to use their voice. Yeah, that's my hope for the future, and those are my thoughts for this week.